Hello, this is Enchanted, and today we're going to be talking about a game that I played fairly recently called Skatebird, which I had been keeping an eye on for a while and finally got around to playing, but it has a few issues. It's got quite a cute sort of visual style, and I quite like the whole idea of Tony Hawk games but scaled down to like a small sparrow-like bird, but it has a few mechanical problems. The level design is quite generally kind of cute, but also can be a little bit samey at times. It's mostly the same types of ramps and the same types of half pipes and quarter pipes and things like that. There's not really that many lines. And the problem with the lines that do exist is the main problem with the game itself, which is that the game itself can be quite cumbersome to play because of how light the main character is with physics. So often the main character will just kind of flying off a ramp somewhere in a way you don't expect, because the game tries to incorporate the bird thing to allow you to fly as part of the game, but it's only really more of a sort of a kind of a small air boost, sort of a glidey sort of thing. And it's not very controllable, and because of that, all it really does is end up launching you off a ramp at an awkward angle because you were holding the jump button when you shouldn't have been, and that just makes things really difficult when it comes to landing big combos. Because the other problem with the game is that it kind of doesn't really have very much middle ground when it comes to difficulty. The objectives are either super easy, like gathering all the skate letters, but the skate letters are all in one tiny area, or like getting a certain high score, the high score is like 20,000 points or something really tiny like that. But then you also get like really difficult missions all of a sudden that are kind of optional ones, but they're like hits like something like 200,000 points, which is actually quite a lot in Skatebird because it's very easy to accidentally crash into something and lose your combo because you've landed at just the wrong angle. So it's very inconsistent for getting big combos and very difficult to keep big combos going. So the bigger combo requirements are almost impossible unless you really get good at the game, and it makes the game quite frustrating to play. The soundtrack is quite cute though, and I quite like the decorations, like the magazines, for example, that all kind of like have bird jokes and things like that. That's quite cute. Like how the Thrasher magazine is actually called Thrasher in universe. And there's also, of course, Anthony Hawk is one of the main not main characters, but like a mythical character people talk about, because of course the word birds need a literal hawk. And like, there's quite a few other cute things with scale as well. Like one of the friends that you make throughout the game is a massive seagull who completely dwarfs you in the entire level, which is quite funny. And of course, like the whole thing revolves around you trying to make a party for your big friend, which is what they referred to, I believe, the human as. The main problem I have with the game though is it's just too inconsistent when actually playing it, and it makes the more difficult objectives really frustrating. One thing that is very cute though is there's a lot of just like little things that kind of play on how cute the game is. Like the ability to get clothing to dress the birds up in, that sort of thing, and I always quite like that kind of customization. Yeah, with we've got the other cute thing is being able to pet the bird, which is its own little mini game thing. Although that can be quite tricky to get just the right feeling on, so that's also just a little bit awkward. But I do recommend Skatebird as just kind of a little thing to play around with. It's just quite frustrating to 100% it because of the issues I've mentioned of. Like just the inconsistency in how high you launch, because in Tony Hawk games you always know exactly how you're going to move when it comes to how you're approaching a ramp or what buttons you're about to press. So you always know, okay, this button's going to make me spine transfer over this, and it's going to go in this exact movement and get me on the other side of the spine, and I'll know it'll work that way. And when you're going off a ramp, you always know just how high you're going to go based on how much momentum you've gained and what your like special meter's doing and everything like that. You can kind of predict how you're going to move, and so and because the animations are very clear as well, you always know exactly what moves you're going to make when your character when you start pressing the buttons to make the character do the moves. Well, in a Skatebird, they have different moves for different directions, but they're almost imperceptibly different except for the flip tricks. There's just not enough animation for just because of the shape of the bird. Just the nature of the bird itself makes it really hard to animate in unique ways. So when you have a human with a lot of long limbs, say a lot, like he's an octopus, but you know what I mean, with 4 long limbs, you can clearly see how they're placed. You can quite easily see how he's grabbing the board, or how he's positioning his feet on the board. But with a bird, it's much harder to really notice the differences between the tricks, which kind of spoils half the fun of the game as well, because half the fun in skating games is seeing how a trick will look, and seeing how the character moves on the board to make the trick happen. Sometimes in a way that's almost physically impossible. But that's kind of the main problem, and that's kind of the main points on the game, though. It's not nearly consistent enough to successfully do the Tony Hawk thing, and doesn't really lean enough into the bird stuff for the platforming as the bird aspect to be actually viable. It just feels kind of uncontrollable, and that makes it quite irritating. Although I do quite like how some levels have little obstacles, like the fans that you can turn on to launch you to certain parts of the level. That can be quite fun to play around with. It's just there's not really very many of those options. There's really only the fans, and I feel they could have done more with that and done more with the whole bird aspect of things. So it really kind of feels a bit, unfortunately, kind of half-baked, but for an indie game, it's not too bad. It's just it's got a lot of major flaws that really hold back a full playthrough. I just want to talk about it because it's a very cute game, and it's got some very cute like interactions between characters and things like that. It's very adorable with how the characters talk to each other and the kind of lessons they learn. Like there's this one gag in one of the final levels where there's this fan that you get offered to turn on, and it's just like, oh cool, I'll turn this on for the locals and they'll be able to do bigger tricks. And then when you turn it on, the locals are like, dude, we knew how to turn that fan on, it's just 3 buttons, we're not stupid, we just didn't want to turn it on because it was dangerous. Because one of us could have got injured, so maybe don't try and tell us how to have fun in our own turf. And that's always quite fun, really. The writing is quite strong in the game, it's just kind of, it's got a very specific vibe, it doesn't really handle the mechanical stuff particularly well, and that's quite a shame. So just talk about that, so thank you for your time. Have a nice day. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and check out my Patreon as well. Speaking of, thank you to James Rossi for supporting me on Patreon.